Taurus, this person close to you is going to pass away. Have you ever felt something settle in your chest? Quietly, gently, yet unmistakably. As if the universe is preparing you for a goodbye you didn't ask for? Maybe it came as a vivid dream you couldn't shake off, or a familiar name that returned to your mind without warning. Or perhaps in the middle of your day, a subtle ache made its way into your body, unspoken but undeniable. If any part of this feels familiar, then this message is calling to you. Welcome to Zodiac Wisdom. I'm Sophia, a psychologist, astrologer, and your guide in this sacred space created for women just like you. If you're a Taurus, or if the steady, soulful strength of Taurus energy lives in you, know this: you're not alone here. This is a place for women over 40, caregivers, creatives, quiet warriors, who've spent years anchoring others and are now being invited back to themselves. In today's video, we're not rushing toward answers. We're slowing down to feel. We're going to explore a quiet loss, not necessarily one that has already happened, but one that may be unfolding quietly around you. And more importantly, we'll explore what that loss reveals about the parts of you that are ready to awaken, to soften, and to come home. You don't need to brace yourself. You just need to bring your presence. If this resonates with you, I invite you to stay until the end. There's something here waiting for you. A truth, a release, maybe even a quiet beginning. And if this message feels like something your heart needed to hear, I'd love for you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone you trust. Because here, astrology isn't entertainment. It's a mirror, a compass, path back to self. Let's begin slowly, softly, together. Gate 1. When intuition speaks, listening beneath the stillness. Taurus, you've always been the grounded one, the steady presence, the calm in the storm. You move through life with quiet strength, rooted in the present moment, loyal to the people and spaces that feel like home. But lately, something feels different. There's a shift you can't quite name, a dream you keep having, a familiar face you haven't thought about in years suddenly appearing in your thoughts. Or maybe it's just a strange stillness, like the world around you has softened into silence. And inside that silence, something is whispering. Something is ending. For many, this would feel unnerving. But you, Taurus, have a unique gift. You know how to sit with the unspoken. You may not chase signs, but you feel them. In your body, in your chest, in the way you suddenly pause and wonder, why do I feel this way? That feeling isn't a coincidence. It's your intuition. And right now it's speaking softly but clearly. People often associate Taurus with logic, patience, and practicality. But beneath that is something rarely talked about: your ancient emotional intelligence. Your ability to sense change not with your mind but with your body. The knot in your stomach. The heaviness behind your eyes. The weight that tells you something is shifting even before you know what it is. Let me tell you about Marlene. She's 54, a holistic nutritionist from Oregon. She told me, "I started waking up at 4:22 every morning for no reason. Not panic, just awake." A few days later, she learned her childhood friend, someone she hadn't seen in years but often thought about, had entered hospice. "I felt it before I knew it," she said. "Not in my head, in my bones." That's Taurus intuition. Deep, embodied, unshakable. If you're feeling something is ending, don't dismiss it. And don't rush to explain it away. You don't need to. Your intuition isn't trying to scare you. It's trying to prepare you, to ground you in what's real, to remind you that sometimes goodbyes begin long before words are spoken. But here's the truth. For Taurus, endings are not failures. They're thresholds. They ask you to slow down, listen inward, and ask, what part of me is being called back to presence? Maybe it's someone in your life who's quietly fading. Maybe it's a version of you that no longer fits. Maybe it's both. Either way, the message is the same. You are being invited to feel. To trust that your quiet knowing is not confusion. It's clarity. And even if no one else understands it yet, you do. Right now, your intuition might be asking you to light a candle, to sit alone in your favorite chair, to write down the name that keeps returning to you. Not to fix anything, just to listen. Because sometimes the most sacred messages don't arrive with thunder. They arrive in stillness. In a whisper only your heart can hear. This isn't about predicting tragedy. It's about honoring transition. It's your soul's way of saying, You're strong enough to stay present through this. And when the time comes, you'll know what to do. So if you've been sensing something, honor it. Trust it. Let it be what it is without needing to control or correct it. Because Taurus, your strength has never been in resistance. It's been in presence. In how deeply you stay. In how gracefully you feel. And that's what this moment asks of you now. In the next chapter, we'll talk about what happens when that ending finally arrives. And how loss, as painful as it may be, can open the door to a different kind of aliveness. One that isn't about holding on, but about remembering who you really are beneath it all. Gate 2. Loss is not the end. It's the threshold of awakening. Taurus, there's something about you that the world often overlooks. People see your strength, your dependability, your calm, and assume you don't break. That you don't grieve deeply. But here's what they miss. You do feel deeply. You just do it quietly, silently, in the privacy of your own heart. And when someone close to you begins to fade, whether slowly through time or suddenly through fate, it shakes the very foundation you've so carefully built. Because to you, Taurus, connection isn't casual. It's sacred. It's soil deep. You don't attach quickly, but when you do, you stay rooted for a lifetime. That's what makes loss so hard for you, not just because of what you're losing, but because of how much of yourself was invested in that bond. Maybe right now there's someone in your life who feels different, a bit further away. Maybe their voice sounds a little softer. Maybe they forget to call. Maybe their presence still exists, but it doesn't reach you in the same way anymore. Or maybe they're already gone, not just physically but spiritually, emotionally, or mentally. And even if you're the only one noticing this shift, you know it's real. You feel it in the way your breath catches when their name appears on your screen. Or doesn't. In the way you walk past a photo and stop, not because you're looking for it, but because it called to you. These are not coincidences. These are signals. And for someone like you, whose life is shaped around stability and continuity, these moments can be quietly earth-shattering. But here's where your real power begins to emerge. You see, Taurus is ruled by Venus, the planet of beauty, love, and most importantly, value. You don't just love people. You cherish them. You create rituals around them. Traditions. You make meaning through consistency. So when a relationship begins to end, either through physical loss or emotional withdrawal, it doesn't just leave a gap in your calendar. It leaves a hole in your worldview. And yet, this is where something surprising begins. Loss for you doesn't always arrive in fire. It arrives like a slow dusk, the sun lowering inch by inch, barely noticeable until you're standing in the dark. And in that darkness, Taurus, you discover what no one else can teach you. How to stay. How to be with the absence instead of trying to fill it. This is your wisdom. I once worked with Clara, a 47-year-old chef and mother of 2 from Ontario. Her father was in hospice care, and even though the doctors had given him weeks, she said she felt like he had already left her. It's like he's still here, but the room doesn't feel full anymore, she told me. I catch myself saving stories for him. Then I remember, I can't share them the same way. For weeks she fought that emptiness, tried to keep busy, focus on her children, her kitchen, her garden. But one evening, she sat down with his old sweater in her lap, and she just cried. I didn't try to be strong that night, she told me later. I just let the sadness take the shape it needed to take. And somehow it helped. That's the truth of it, Taurus. Grief isn't something you conquer, something you allow. And when you do, when you stop holding yourself together just to get through the day, you begin to realize that loss isn't here to destroy you. It's here to refine you. It strips away the distractions, the surface-level comfort, the parts of you that believed you had to keep everything exactly the same in order to feel safe. And in their place, it plants something quiet. A seed. A truth that can only be found through stillness. Everything you love is temporary, but what you become through that love is eternal. This is what loss teaches you, Taurus. Not to be afraid of endings, but to see them as thresholds, initiations, invitations into a deeper, more soul-connected version of yourself. So yes, you can grieve, deeply, fully, without guilt, without rushing to move on. Light a candle every night if you need to. Write them letters. Cook their favorite meal. Cry into your pillow when the silence gets too loud. That's not weakness. That's reverence. And here's the part no one tells you. When you give yourself permission to mourn honestly without performance, you begin to change. Not into someone new, but into someone more whole, more real, more you. You may find yourself remembering small details that make you laugh and cry at the same time. A voice that echoes in the hallway when you're alone. A scent that brings them back for a moment. And instead of trying to make it stop, you breathe into it. You let it come and go like the wind. Because Taurus, you understand cycles better than anyone. You know that the earth doesn't resist winter. It rests in it. It renews beneath the frost. And so do you. If someone close to you is slipping away or has already gone, know this: you don't have to bounce back. You don't have to prove anything. You only have to stay present, to honor what was, to love what still is, and to allow yourself the sacred pause before whatever comes next. Because something is coming next. It won't replace what you lost. It won't erase the ache, but it will soften it. And eventually, the space left behind won't just be empty. It will become fertile. It will be filled with your memories, your growth, your courage, your capacity to love again. Not despite what you've been through, but because of it. In the next chapter, we'll explore what it really means to forgive, not just the person who left, but the version of you who tried so hard to hold everything together. Because Taurus, you don't have to carry it all anymore. You're allowed to put it down. Gate 3. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. Taurus, you are loyal to others, to your values, and to the version of the past you hold close to your heart. But loyalty, when stretched across loss, can turn into something heavier. Regret. Lingering questions. Moments you replay in your mind again and again, hoping for a different ending. Forgiveness is not something you hand out easily. It's not impulsive. It's not performative. For you, it's a process, slow, private, deeply rooted in meaning. And perhaps that's why when someone you love leaves, with words unspoken, wounds unhealed, or silence unresolved, the weight doesn't go away. Settles in you. You may tell yourself, it's too late to fix it. Or, I should have done more. You may carry those thoughts like stones in your chest. And because you're Taurus, strong, composed, you carry them quietly. But that doesn't mean they aren't heavy. So let me ask you something gently. Is there something, or someone, you still haven't forgiven? Not out of resentment, but because forgiveness has always felt like a door that you're not ready to walk through alone? Let me tell you about Carmen. She's 61 now. A craftswoman, Taurus to the core. She built her life around care. Caring for her family, her clients, her garden, even her pets. But when her younger sister passed suddenly, after years of estrangement, Carmen wasn't met with closure. She was met with silence. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, she told me. I thought we'd have more time. In one of our sessions, I asked her what she would have said if she'd had 1 more hour. Carmen paused, then whispered, I'm sorry I didn't reach out. I wish I'd tried sooner. But I loved you. I always did. And that moment, that honest, messy private release, that was forgiveness. Not for her sister. For herself. Taurus, here's something you need to know. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's not about pretending you weren't hurt, or pretending they didn't leave too soon. It's not about rewriting the story. It's about finally allowing yourself to put down the parts of it that no longer serve you. You are allowed to forgive someone who's gone. You are allowed to forgive someone who never said sorry. You are allowed to forgive yourself for the things you didn't say, the boundaries you didn't set, the time you thought you had. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give away. It's a freedom you give yourself. Taurus, your energy is slow and sacred. You don't rush your seasons. You don't pretend to bloom when you're still thawing. So let this forgiveness bloom in its own time. You don't need to force it. Just begin by asking, what have I been holding that no longer belongs to me? Is it guilt? Shame? Disappointment? An old story about what you should have done? Write it down. Speak it aloud. Whisper it into the bathwater. Fold it into a letter you never send. And then offer yourself the grace you've given to so many others. I did the best I could with what I knew then. I am allowed to grow now. I am allowed to release. Forgiveness for Taurus is not about forgetting. It's about remembering with tenderness instead of pain. It's about saying, this mattered. This shaped me. But it doesn't get to define me forever. And here's what happens when you do. Your nervous system softens. Your breath deepens. The ache in your chest loosens its grip, and something long dormant within you begins to rise. Not in a dramatic way, but in the most Taurus way possible. Steady, grounded, rooted in truth. You begin to make space for joy again, for trust, for lightness, for connection that doesn't carry the burden of the past, but is free to exist in the present. Taurus, this is the quiet return to yourself. Not the version of you that had to hold it all together, but the one who's allowed to let go. You don't need permission from the world. You don't need approval from anyone else. This is between you, your soul, and the version of yourself that's ready to stop carrying the weight of the unspoken. Forgive gently. Forgive slowly. Forgive because your heart has more to live for than the pain you've been holding. And in the next chapter, we'll explore what that looks like in real life. Not in grand gestures, but in small sacred moments when you finally begin to feel here again. Because Taurus, the deepest healing isn't loud. It's quiet, present, and beautifully real. Conclusion. A soft landing. You don't have to rise quickly. Taurus, if you've made it here, through the signs, through the stillness, through the sorrow, then you already know this isn't just a conversation about endings. It's a remembrance of how much you've loved, of how deeply you've stayed, of how bravely you've begun to let go. You've walked through quiet grief, intuitive knowing, and the sacred act of forgiveness. Not as a way to escape pain, but as a way to meet it, to sit beside it, to say, even this belongs. That's the truth about Taurus healing. It doesn't demand transformation overnight. It doesn't force you to leap forward. It invites you instead to land more fully where you are, to let the dust settle, to let your breath return, to find beauty in simply being. You don't need to start over tomorrow. You don't need a 10-step plan for the next phase of your life. What you need is presence, permission, and patience with the version of you who is just now starting to feel again. I know you've carried so much, not just grief but responsibility, the role of the strong one, the dependable one, the quiet rock for everyone else. But now it's your turn to receive. Not answers, not solutions, but grace. So take this moment, let your shoulders drop, place your hand on your heart and feel what's still alive in there. Maybe it's tenderness, maybe it's exhaustion, maybe it's hope you weren't expecting to find. Whatever it is, it's real, and it's yours. And if this journey has touched something inside you, I'd love to hear it. Was there a line, a memory, or a feeling that stayed with you? Share it below. Your story matters here. It may be the very thing another Taurus soul is waiting to read. If this message felt like something you've been needing, take one gentle action. Like this video. Subscribe to this space. Share it with someone you love. Because here we're not rushing to heal. We're simply coming home. This is the beginning of a deeper, quieter, more honest relationship with yourself. And Taurus, you don't have to rush it. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're simply becoming more rooted, more open, more you than you've ever been. We'll be back soon with new chapters, exploring how Taurus women rediscover love, purpose, and power in ways that feel nourishing and true. Until then, remember, the softest step taken in truth is the strongest one of all.